Awesome people, welcome to my channel. This is Sapta, and if you are here for the first time, this is the place where I help designers build and scale their career with tips, suggestions, and tutorials. So if you're into it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. In this episode, I'm going to teach you to animate the very popular like animation of Twitter. This one. What is even more awesome is that along with that, I'm going to teach you another very integral part of motion design using After Effects, which is Lottie. To put it in simple words, Lottie is a technology that converts the animations that you create in After Effects into lines of code that you can directly hand over to your developer and they can implement it by just plugging and playing them. But it has certain restrictions as well, and I'm going to cover all of them today. So I will teach you to create this Twitter animation. I will teach you how to install the free plugin of Lottie into After Effects. And I will also talk about what are the things that you need to keep in mind if you are animating, keeping Lottie asset in your mind. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. I've created some assets inside Adobe Illustrator. These are very simple. It just has three kinds of things. As you see here in the layers panel, it's the unselected heart, which is nothing but the gray outline, the selected heart, which is the pink filled one, and the confetti. For this animation, I will be importing this file inside After Effects and I'll be using only these two hearts. I won't be directly using these confetti which I have made there, but I have still created them just for a reference so that I can at least pick colors and the relative position and so on. So I go ahead and save this file and I go to After Effects. This is an empty canvas of After Effects, and while I'm in the project panel, I will double click here and navigate to the place where my Illustrator file is. This is the one, twitterlikeassets.ai. I will select this, and in this place, import as, from the drop down I will select composition, retain layer sizes. Now this is very important so that the layers which you have prepared in Illustrator also gets carried forward to After Effects. If you want to know more about how assets are imported inside After Effects and what are the different ways and their pros and the cons, I would recommend you check out the other video, the dedicated video which I have made on that. I will leave the link in the description and also on the top right corner under the info button. So here's my asset. It's imported inside After Effects. It has also created a composition which is of the same size as the Illustrator file. The size actually doesn't quite matter. I have taken a size of 320 into 320. We can always scale it up and down based on our need. So I will open this. You see all the three layers which we had inside Illustrator are also present in After Effects right now. So yep, these are my assets. For now, we'll not be using the confetti, so I will add a lock and I will make it invisible. And the same with the unselected heart, I will make that invisible as well. As a first step, I'll go ahead and create a circle. So for that, I will use the ellipse tool and create a circle which is roughly around this big. Of course, I will center it with the artboard, and to do that, I will select, go to the align tool, align vertically and horizontally, and this is where it is, and I will bring it under the hearts so that I see the relative position of the heart with respect to the circle. I think this is fine. And now we will scale this, and to do that I will move my handle 10 frames ahead. As you know, it's not a great idea to start any animation from 0 seconds, which isn't quite valid for this one because this is going to be an asset which you will hand over to your developer, but regardless, let's move just 10 frames ahead. I'll press Command and Shift and press the right keyboard button once to move the handle 10 frames ahead. And now to this shape layer 1, I will add a scale keyframe. To do that, I will hit S on my keyboard, click on this stopwatch to add a keyframe, move 20 frames ahead, Command Shift and the right keyboard button twice. I'll add one more keyframe here. And now I'll go back to the initial stage, set the scale to 0. And in the final stage, it can remain 100%, of course. I'll just zoom into the timeline so that I see better. Now along with this, I will also animate the color. Okay, first of all, this yellow is not the color that we want, so I will go ahead and change the color to the same pink as the heart. I will select this color, but this color also I will animate it. So while it is in the initial position, the color can be pink. Well, you don't see it right now because the scale is set to 0. So I will click on this drop down, go to contents, ellipse, fill, and I will add a keyframe for fill color by clicking on this stopwatch. I'll go ahead and press U on the keyboard so that I see only the keyframes which I have added to my timeline, so which is color and scale. Now I'll move this handle to the end and add one more color keyframe. If you remember, this control used to be on the left side of the panel before, but with the latest update of After Effects, they have moved it to the right side. I think which is fine, it's just about getting used to it. So I'll click here and add one more keyframe of color in the final position. And while in the final position, I will change the color to a lilac, something like a purple, a slightly desaturated version, a lighter version of it. Yeah, maybe something like this is good. So when this grows, it also changes the color. Of course, these keyframes are linear right now, but I'm going to add some easing to them. In this regard, I want to call out that what I'm trying to do here is to mimic what Twitter does and not necessarily what I think is right or should be done. All this attempt is to make a like animation which is similar to the one which Twitter has made. So I will select the last two keyframes, not the first ones, and I will add an influence of the incoming velocity of 60%. 60%. So I'm using this Motion 2 plugin because I have it. If you do not have this plugin, all that you need to do is just select this keyframe, right click on it, go to keyframe velocity and add an influence of incoming velocity 60%. You see, this plugin kind of works in the same way. So I'll just go ahead and click OK. This is what it is like. And I would also want the color to start changing after a while. Maybe somewhere in the middle of it. So if you remember, this was 20 frames apart. So I will move the handle 10 frames ahead by pressing Command and Shift and the right keyboard button once. And I will move this keyframe here so that it starts scaling before, but the color starts changing only towards the end. So this is the effect that I want. Now, we need a mask to this layer as well. Actually, I'll go ahead and give it a name as Circle Main. Now we need a mask for this circle so that when it grows, another mask creates a hole inside it. And to do that, I will simply make a copy of this circle. I'll go ahead and select this layer, press Command D to duplicate this layer. I'm going to name the second one as Mask. I'll hit U on the keyboard so that I see all the keyframes which I have added. And now for this mask, I don't really need the color to change because it doesn't matter. I won't even be seeing the mask. It'll just do some work, for me. So I will just remove this, we don't need unnecessary keyframes in our timeline. It's already very complicated. And for the mask, I'm going to move these keyframes another 10 frames to the right. To do that, I will select these two keyframes, press and hold Option and Shift on the keyboard and press the right keyboard button once. This moves this entire set towards the right by 10 frames. So while it is here, I will select this as a mask. So I will select Circle Main. Come here under Track Matte. By default, it is none. Under this drop down, I will select Alpha Inverted Matte Mask. Now this mask is nothing but this layer. It picks up the layer which is right above it. If you want to know more about masks, I have a dedicated video made only for that. I will leave it linked in the description and also under the info button at the top right corner of your screen. So you see, this is what the mask is doing. So when we say alpha inverted, it just says that whenever this mask exists, this shouldn't be seen. So whenever this is growing, you start not seeing it, and hence this hole that you see in the center is created. Okay, I think this looks fine. But if you see here, I see a faint line, a faint outline of the circle still visible. It's because the mask and the circle is exactly of the same size here. So what I need to do is just make the mask slightly bigger. Since this is an inverted mask, that is alpha inverted matte, what is inside the mask won't be visible. So if I make the mask instead of 100% in the final position, if I make it say around 102%, the mask gets slightly bigger and I don't see anything. That outline is gone. So it's much cleaner right now. This is fine. Now along with that, we need to animate this heart. If you remember, if you see how the Twitter animation is, while the circle grows, this heart jumps. So let us try and mimic that here. We'll do it using scale. So this is where the heart becomes 100%. So we'll go backward here. So I select the heart. I'll hit S on the keyboard to activate scale. I'll click on the stopwatch to add a keyframe. And since I'm going from behind, I'll be moving the handle 10 frames to the left. Command and Shift, and I'll hit the keyboard button left once. So here it is. Here I'll add one more scale keyframe. And now I'll move the handle to 10 frames further to the left. Command Shift and the left keyboard button once. And I'll add one more scale keyframe here. Now, while it's in the initial position, of course you don't see it because the colors are same. I will just hide the circle main for a while so that you see what is happening. Here's my heart. In the initial position, I will set the scale to 0%. In the middle position, I will make it slightly more than 100%, maybe 110%. Actually, I'll make it 115%. Let's see how it would look. 115%. And in the final position, I make it back to 100%. So what happens is it grows, overshoots, and then comes and sits. If I just go ahead and play, you see, it's a bounce sort of effect that you get with these set of keyframes. Now I'll go and make the circle main visible once again because we want all of these things to happen at the same time. Cool, we can make a few more adjustments to it. I think this jumping of the heart should happen a little later. So what I will do is I will select all these 3 keyframes and move them to the right by maybe around 3 frames. And to do that, I will press and hold Option on the keyboard and the right keyboard button 1, 2, and 3 times so that it just delays a bit. I want the circle to grow and only then the heart appears. Yeah, I think this is much better. This is much better. Now for this heart, I will add a different kind of keyframe here, which is for the second, that is for the center one. I'm not going to touch the first or the last, but I will add some sort of easing to the center one, which is nothing but this slider here in my plugin. So I will set a value of 40%. Actually, I'll add a value of 60%. Let's use the same value that I have been using. Yeah, let's go and see the preview. Now you might be wondering, what do I do if I don't have this plugin? What does this center correspond to? What the center means is, it's nothing but adding an influence to both incoming and outgoing. See, this is at the center, so there is velocity which is incoming towards it, and also there will be certain velocity which will go out of it. So it has incoming as well as outgoing. So if I were to show you, just select this, right click, keyframe velocity, you see 60% is added to all of them. Now you see 2 for each one of them because with the latest update of After Effects, it just started showing the dimensions separately, X and Y. In the older version, it used to be just merged into one single thing. It's just one extra thing which the new update has brought. Anyways, the point here is you need to add 60% for both incoming and outgoing velocity. I'll go ahead and click OK. And now this is what it is. Now here's one more thing which is remaining. If you remember, we also have an unselected heart here, which is this. Now this, I will bring it to the bottom first of all, because I don't want this to disturb while everything else is happening. So I will keep it at the bottom under the circle. So I will click, drag and bring it under circle main so that it's the second last thing or the last thing, because confetti anyways we are not using in this animation here. We will create confetti, but we'll not use this layer, of course. So here's my unselected heart. What I want to do is, while the circle, the center purple circle grows, I want this unselected heart to shrink a bit. And to do that, I will use scale again. So while my handle is here, that is, where the circle main grows, I will also add a scale keyframe to unselected heart. And to do that, I will hit S on the keyboard. I will click on this stopwatch to add a keyframe. And now I'll not move it by, number of frames. Instead, I will just hold the mouse and I will drag this handle so that I'm comfortable as to where I would want this to shrink. I think this is a nice position, while the circle is this big. It's certain number of frames. I don't even have to count because I have directly, by eye estimation, I have moved the handle here. And this is where I want the heart, unselected heart, to shrink to a certain point. So let me go ahead and add a keyframe in this position. To do that, I click here. And now I'll go and start shrinking the heart step by step, maybe 80, just so that it's right under the circle. In my case, it's coming around 64%, depending on where you put this handle, you may get a different value here. The point is to just completely hide it under the circle, right? Okay, I think this is good enough. But here's one problem here, after all those things have happened, I still see that gray heart, the unselected one, which I do not want to, which I do not intend to. To get away with that, what we will do is, after this essentially, when the gray heart shrinks and goes behind the pink, there's no more function of the gray heart remaining. I don't need that unselected heart at all. So what I can do, I can chop this layer off at this position because I don't need it later. To do that, I will select this layer, and while it is at the position where I want to chop, I will press and hold Option and press the square bracket close button on the keyboard. And when you do that, you see it chops. It is equivalent to it not being present here at all. Now you see the gray heart is not shown anymore. This is exactly what we wanted. Awesome. The circles are growing. The red heart or the pink heart is bouncing. Now the only thing which is remaining are the confetti. Let's go ahead and make them. This is when the confetti, this layer, comes into the picture. So I will go ahead and make it visible. It still doesn't need to get unlocked because I'm not going to move it around anywhere, right? We need this only as a reference. If you see, there are 7 instances of the same thing and each one of has different color. So we will do the animation only once, copy it, rotate it, and then change the color. So it'll reduce a lot of our effort, and that is the reason why I'm not going to use what I've created in Illustrator. Of course, I could have used that as well, but I feel drawing a circle here inside After Effects is also easy enough. So while I have this in the background, I will use this as a reference, use my ellipse tool, zoom in a bit so that, I do a good job here. I'll create a circle which is roughly the size of the bigger circle that you see here. Yep, I think this is good enough. This is good enough. I'll go and give it the same color to it. Some lilac, some shade of color. I'll put it here. And now I can go ahead and make it disappear once again. I don't need that confetti layer at all. I'm done with it actually. So here's my circle. So I will put it at the center. I'll align it centered here by clicking on Align Horizontally. So it is now centered with my canvas. Now I want to start the animation when the selected heart, that is the pink heart, starts its motion, which is nothing but this is my selected heart. And this is the position. I'll just put it up a little so that you see. So this is the position where the animation of the selected heart starts, and this is exactly where I would want these to start their animation as well. There are 2 things which are happening here essentially. One is the position and the other one is the scale. So their position changes and so does their scale. Well, in fact, if you closely see the Twitter animation, their colors are also changing. So as the animation is happening, the fill color also animates from the initial to the final position. But I think for this tutorial, I'm going to skip that. It's very simple again, but just to reduce some complexity, I will just skip that bit. And also it is barely noticeable, the color that is being changed there. So I will skip that bit, and to keep it simple, I will just add a position keyframe. And to do that, I will hit P on my keyboard. Click on the stopwatch to add a keyframe. Now I'll add a scale keyframe as well. To add a scale keyframe and not hide this position that we have added, I'll press and hold Shift on my keyboard and hit S on the keyboard. This reveal scale. I'll click on the stopwatch to add another keyframe here. And now I will move a couple of frames ahead. I'm saying couple of them because how many frames we are moving, it doesn't quite matter right now because we are going to make some micro adjustments to them. So that is the reason. So let me, just move it somewhere here maybe, because we're going to change. We're going to move around the keyframes anyways. I will add the final set of keyframes, position as well as scale. Now, as we all know, the scale should be 0, but let us make it 10% right now so that it's at least visible. It's easier for me to work around, right? Now I'll go to the initial position, and I want the initial position to be starting from somewhere here, the center of this, the donut that you see here. And when it is in the final one, I want this to end somewhere here. You see, we put it 10%, so you see a small dot out there. So I select this and I'll move it a little up, maybe somewhere here. Okay, so this is what is happening right now. We'll do a lot of adjustments to that, but before that I will also make a copy of this. I will make a copy of this, which is nothing but shape layer 1. I select it, press Command and hit D on my keyboard to duplicate it. So when we duplicate a layer, it also duplicates all the keyframes inside. If I hit U on the keyboard, you will see these are the keyframes. Now if you remember, there were 2 circles and that is the reason why I duplicated them. So what I will do is I will change the initial and the final positions of them. This is the second one. I will call it the second, and I'll name it the first. I think this is good enough. For the second one, the final position is not here, but somewhere here. So, I will drag and bring it somewhere here. If you remember, there was an offset between both of them, right? So I will just keep it here. I'll go back to the initial position. And even in the initial position, there was a bit of an offset. So I'll click the second one. I'll select the second one and move it somewhere, to the right of it here. And now it makes me feel maybe even the final one should be a little away. Maybe something like this. Yep. I think this is fine. Now let us go ahead and do some adjustments here. The adjustments are honestly based on your eye estimation, what you think is happening. When I feel that it's moving really fast, it's starting really fast and then slowing down very much. Which means I'll have to add an influence of the incoming velocity, which is a very high number, which is for this keyframes. I will add a value of 100. This one, I select the final keyframes and I will set an influence of 100% for the incoming velocities here for both position and scale. Now this is what is happening. Now, when I again see it, I feel that the position is changing, but the scale is changing even slower. So what I will do is I will just select this final scale keyframes of both of them. I select one, then I press and hold shift, and then I select the other, and then I will move them towards the right. And to do that, I will press and hold shift option, and I will keep pressing the right keyboard button maybe 3 times. Let's move them by 30 frames. Let's see how it looks. I think this is fine. Also, this is the time I think we can go and make the final scale keyframes. Remember, we kept them 10 so that we get to see where they are before we finalize their position. Now is the time we can go ahead and make them 0. So I will select both of them and set the scale to 0. Mind that your handle is here in the final position. So now they're gone because they are 0. Now this is what is happening. Yep, so this is where the position ends and this is where the scale ends. The scale ends later. Now let us do a few more adjustments to it. Again, when I see the animation, I feel that the second circle is starting a little late. So there's an offset between the first and the second as well. I will do that. So I will select all the keyframes of the second circle and move them ahead by 10 frames. To do that, I will press and hold Option and Shift on the keyboard and hit the right keyboard button once. I move them to the right by 10 frames. So now what happens? There is an offset between the two. Well, 10 actually feels a little too much to me. So what I will do is I'll make it 5. So I will select all of them and move them back by 5 frames, which is I press and hold Option on the keyboard and press the left keyboard button 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now this reduces the offset between them. I think this is much better. This is much better. Yup. Now when I see it again, I feel this is a little too way apart. So for the second one, I will go to the final position, which is this. Here's the position. And I will move it little towards inside, so that the X difference is not so much. Alright. Now here's one more last thing that I wish to do to both of them, which is I want their position to change, but I want them to start shrinking only after a certain stage, which means the starting point of the scale animation, I want to bring it towards the right so that I delay it a bit. So, I will select this. I will select both of them together actually, all the scale initial frames, and I will move them by a couple of frames. Let's see, maybe I'll press Option and Shift on my keyboard and hit the right keyboard button. Let's see, once, maybe twice. I press it twice. Essentially, I move them by 20 frames. Let's see how they look right now. Now that's a little too much, so maybe 20 is not needed. I will move them back by 10, so I will select both of them, press and hold Option and Shift and move the left keyboard button once. Let's see how that looks. I think this is better. This is better. This one, the left circle comes first, settles down, and after a while the bigger one comes, and both of them scale down really slow. I think I will make it even slower. I will select the final keyframes of the scale property by another 10 frames. I'll press and hold Option and Shift and move it to the right using the keyboard button. Yes, I think this looks good. Awesome. Now we'll have to copy them. And to copy them, we will use another technique of pre-composing. Now, pre-compose is nothing but creating a composition with just these two elements, and you can do it directly from here with all the animations that you have created. All that we need to do is select these first, press and hold Shift and select the second one, right-click on any one of them and click Pre-compose. I will click on this. I'll give it a name, confetti 1, and I'll hit OK. Now, the moment you do that, you will see this is Twitter-like assets was the file that you were working on. You had created the confetti animation here itself, and then when you pre-composed, it did two things. It created a new composition with only those two layers inside it, and it placed that same composition in the exact same place where you had placed them. Okay, so I will close this confetti for now because I do not need it. And here is my confetti 1. One thing that I will do is I will bring it under the main circle because I do not want them over the main circle, right? So I bring it here, and when I play it, you see this is where it starts. I see some unwanted circles here. We'll take care of that in a bit. Don't worry about it. First, let us go ahead and make copy. Now, if you remember, there were 7 instances which were spread across the circle. Now, we all know that a full circle is nothing but 360 degrees. And there are 7 instances, which means they are spread at a distance at an angle of around 360 by 7, which is roughly 51.4. So for this, we'll consider 51.5 degrees. Okay. Now we will make copies of this, which is nothing but confetti, and we will keep rotating them by an angle of 51.5 degrees. Now here's one important thing that you need to keep in mind. When you're working with a composition here, when you make a copy here in the timeline, it creates a copy of the same instance, which is this. So essentially, you are making a copy of the child. Actually, there's no concept of parent and child, but it's going to be the same thing. So if I, make a copy of confetti 1 here and rotate it by 51.5 degrees and then change the color of it, it will also change the color of this because these are copies of the same instance. So what we want to do is, I will delete this because that's not what we want. We want different colors for different instances. So we'll have to make the copy here. When we make the copy here, it creates a new instance and then we pull and bring it here. It's as simple as that. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. So this is my confetti 1. I'll make a copy of it. It's already automatically calls it confetti 2. I will just bring it here. It automatically aligns, and I will hit R on the keyboard and set it a rotation of 51.5 degrees. Now I'll make a copy of this once again, confetti 3. I bring it here. I will set a rotation value of 51.5 into 2. Okay, Now, likewise, I'll do it for all 7. For this one, I will set a rotation value of 51.5 into 3, so on and so forth. I'll speed this up. So here we are done. I have made 7 copies of them in the project panel, and then I brought them here and then rotated them. So if I just go ahead and play, you see the animation is almost there, just like the way we wanted it. Okay, now there are some smaller tweaks here, like I do not want these things to show up while it is in this position. So, I do not want them to show up till they are somewhere here maybe. So while my handle is here, I will select all the confetti here from 1 to 7 and I will chop them the initial parts. To do that, I will hit Option on my keyboard and hit the square bracket open button on the keyboard. So it chops the initial parts, the front part. So they don't exist here and they start existing only from this part. Yup. I think this is fine. This looks great. Now we just need to go ahead and change the colors. That's it. And this is where we will again use the reference which I had created in Illustrator, if you remember. So I will just make that visible once. Yep, I'll keep it this way. This is nothing but the static one which I made in Illustrator. So we will just take colors as reference. So it doesn't have to be the exact one because you will see it for a microsecond or something. So this is purple. Let me just see. This is a pale shade of red. This is a pale shade of green. This is purple again, blue, again some pale shade of green, and yellow. Let's go ahead and set those colors. So I hit that, and this is my confetti 1, which is nothing but the one which is vertically up. The next one is this one. This one had a color of yellow, so I will double click on it. I will select both of them. I will give it a shade of around a pale yellow, something like this. I'll go ahead and click OK. Now this was, we'll go one by one. This one had a pale shade of green, a very pale shade of green. So I will give that pale shade of green to this one, which is, something around this shade. Yeah, I think this is good enough. I'll close it. Now we have our confetti in place and they are colored as well. I think this looks awesome, just like the one we see in Twitter. Let's quickly get a UI. I have a Twitter UI, that a dummy one that I had made. I will double click on this. I will import that asset as well, which is nothing but this Twitter UI.png which I had just made. I will click open and I will create a new composition here. I'll press Command and N on the keyboard and I want the width to be 1080, 2400, frame rate of 60. And duration of 10 seconds is good enough. I will just call it a sample UI, Twitter sample UI maybe. Yeah, Twitter sample UI. I'll go ahead and click OK. This is my Twitter sample UI composition. And in this one, I will drag and drop this Twitter UI PNG. So here it is. I'll lock it because I don't need to use this image at all. And this is where I will bring my new composition where I had made the like, which is nothing but Twitter like assets, which is this one. I will drag and drop it here. Now it's a little big, so we'll align it here and then we'll scale it down. I'll hit S on the keyboard. I'll hit S on the keyboard and I will keep scaling it down till it kind of coincides with the heart that we already have. I see a slight mismatch of color, but I think that's okay. I will let it be. When you are making it, maybe you can use the perfect colors. So you see, I've coincided my animation which I have just made with this. And now in this one, when I go ahead and play, you see, this is just like the way it happens on Twitter. Awesome. So I will chop this composition at around 2 seconds. Doesn't matter. This is just the preview in case I want to show it off on Dribble or some other place. This is for that purpose. Now here's where the next part comes. Now that we have made the animation, this is my animation file. This is going to be the asset that you will hand over to your developer. And this time we will be handing off a Lottie assets. What Lottie essentially does is it's going to convert all these animations, entire thing that you have done, into lines of code. To do that, let us first chop this animation and make it absolutely ready. I'll bring it to around 1 second and I'll hit N on the keyboard so that this is the entire duration of the animation. So this is a 1 second long animation that we are going to convert into a JSON file. JSON file is nothing but the file which we'll hand over to your developer, which is nothing but the lines of code. And to do that, we'll be using this plugin called Lottie files. Here's the official website of Lottie. Lottie, if you see this logo out here, it's actually prepared by Airbnb. It's a technology. It's essentially a library for Android, iOS, web, and Windows. It's being developed by the good folks at Airbnb, and then they have made it open source. And after they have made it open source, there are different companies which have come and they have built over it and prepared different plugins and technologies which makes our lives easier as designers and developers. So what we will do right now is we will install the plugin using which you can export. And after that, you can just hand over that JSON file that you export along with this link to your developer, and they should be able to figure out the rest of the things. You don't have to get into the details of how the code works and all. But there's one thing that you must know, which is Lottie has got its limitation. Not everything that you can do inside After Effects is supported by Lottie. So if you want to see the list of features that are supported, you can just click here, supported After Effects features, and it'll show you a list of all the things which are supported. Of course, a thumbs up means it is supported, and this no entry means it's not supported or something. I will leave all these links in the description. You can just check them out. But the good thing is all the simple stuff, the shapes or the scale, opacity, rotation, and the normal things that we do are all supported by Lottie. So whatever we have done today as a part of this Twitter animation, all these things, including masks and everything, they are supported by Lottie. So we have nothing to worry about. In case you're working on something which calls for some special treatment, then you might want to come back to this list and check if it is supported and if it is supported on the platform for which you are making. But one important thing or one awesome thing inside After Effects is actually not supported by Lottie, which is the stuff under the Effects and Presets panel. Now this Effects and Presets panel has a lot of wonderful things. I've recently made a tutorial on page flipping animation of an ebook reader, and that was done using one of the effects. So which means for something like that, you cannot export it with Lottie because Lottie still doesn't have the support of these. Okay, if you haven't seen the tutorial, I will leave a link to the description and also on the info button at the top right corner. So let's go back to this. So now that you have seen what is supported and not supported, let us go ahead and download the plugin. There are two different kinds of plugins that you can pick up. Like I've said, individual teams had picked up from where Airbnb had left and they've started working on their own. One of them is Body Movin', which is this. This is also an After Effects plugin. You download it and then you use it. And another one is Lottie files. I personally prefer Lottie files because, well, both of them do the same work, but this company Lottie files, the folks at Lottie files had been more active at pushing updates and bringing in new features, so I kind of prefer this. It's been a while that I switched to Lottie files from Body Movin'. So the first step is to download the plugin. So there are two options. You can download via Adobe Exchange if you're a Creative Cloud user. I am a Creative Cloud user, but for some reason this didn't work for me. I don't know why. So, we can do it the other way as well. So you just click on this, you download the file. Here's the plugin. It says aeplugin.zxp. Now I'm on Mac, and to install the ZXP file, I will need another tool which is called a ZXP installer. I mean, nothing complicated. You just have to install it separately, which is nothing but this. I will leave this link also in the description. So you can download and install this ZXP installer. And once you have done it, ZXP installer is something like this. It's as simple as this. You drag and drop the ZXP here and it'll install it. So let's just go ahead and do that. Here's my ZXP file that I just installed. I will drag and drop it in the ZXP installer. And this animation suggests that, okay, it's asked for my password because for installing something, you need to enter your password on Mac. My extension is now installed. All that I need to do is just restart After Effects and I'm good to go. So here I am. I will restart and come back. So here I'm back in After Effects and now my plugin is installed. Where do you find it? It's under Windows. I will show that. So let me tell you how you export it. Just like you would export a normal video or a normal animation, what would you do? You would go to composition and click on add to render queue or add to media encoder if you have that. And then you would follow the instruction what you need to do there, right? In the same way, instead of going to composition, we will go to window, extensions, Lottie files. When you click on it, a window opens inside After Effects and it picks up all the compositions that you have here. This confetti 1, 2, 3, 4, all that we have created here, right? It pulls everything here. But the one which I want to render is nothing but Twitter-like assets. So this Twitter-like assets is what I want to render. Now all that I need to do to render is to go ahead and click this button, and as simple as that, it starts rendering. Okay, it has thrown some errors saying that it cannot save the logs. Honestly, I don't care whether it generates a log or not. Yes, it has rendered. So this is my Lottie animation and I can save it to my PC. So let me just go ahead and save a JSON file. There are two ways you can do it, but JSON, I think your developer is going to prefer that. .lottie is a new format. So I'm not sure how reliable it is. I'm sure it is if they have built it. But regardless, I'll go ahead and click on .json and I will just save it in my desktop. Now, if you come to my desktop here, this is nothing but the JSON file. It's the Twitter-like assets.json. And if you want to see what is inside, these lines of code, these are nothing but your animation, folks. See how beautifully it got converted into certain lines of code. Now, if you want to preview it, of course, you had already previewed it once inside, or if your developer wants to preview it, all that they need to do is just go to lottiefiles.com/preview. And here you just need to drag and drop your JSON file once again. And it's uploading. And after it is uploaded, you see the preview here. So that's it. We have rendered. And now all that you need to do is just hand it over to your developer and they will take care of the rest. I hope you have learned something new from this tutorial. If you like this video, like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. This is Sapta. See you guys in the next one.